We are introduced to a completely frozen world, with people freezing, and our protagonist appears walking on the ice, and suddenly an earthquake occurs, and the ice where the protagonist was standing breaks. As the protagonist falls, he pulls out a stick, a hook, and clings to the wall and slides down, the protagonist already happy for not having died in the fall. Looking ahead, he sees a three-eyed monster staring at him. It was a snow monster that appeared at the beginning of the apocalypse. Our protagonist immediately starts running away from the monster, when suddenly a part of the ice breaks and falls right on the monster's head, sending it flying into the sky instantly. The protagonist didn't even have a chance to feel relieved when the ceiling breaks and more snow buries him alive. And that's when the hack begins. A kind of transparent, glowing slug appears and enters the protagonist's body, and he wakes up with a glowing eye. As I said, the hack activated. Wondering what happened, the protagonist spots a piece of chocolate that he decides to take to someone. When the protagonist arrives home, a woman opens the door for him and jumps to hug him. She calls him dear and says welcome, making him blush immediately. The protagonist takes out the chocolate he found, but his wife already makes a face and asks if it was just one. The protagonist says yes, but she still thanks him and makes a disappointed face. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door and the protagonist goes to open it, only to get hit in the face and sent flying. A man enters, hugging the protagonist's wife, and he immediately asks her why she did that. She says she did it because she only stays with strong men. The man approaches the protagonist and asks where the food is. The protagonist says he doesn't know about any food. The man grabs the protagonist and starts beating him, breaking his arms, legs, and face. Everyone starts hitting the protagonist, and once he's completely broken, the man takes a knife and finishes him off. Our protagonist wakes up at work with only 28 hours left until the apocalypse happens. People are shocked because an aurora has appeared, signaling the coming ice age. Suddenly, the protagonist's girlfriend, who cheated on him in the future, calls him. He answers and tells her that they have broken up, and she should not call again. The protagonist then declares that this time no woman will interfere with him. With only 1 hour left, the protagonist decides to gather supplies, but 2 police officers appear and stop him, asking him to empty his backpack. The rookie officer thinks it is a weapon and decides to shoot the protagonist. This is when the protagonist's hack activates, allowing him to see the bullet moving very slowly and dodge it. He calls the officer an idiot and says he is a taxpayer. He continues dodging bullets until he reaches the rookie officer, punches him, sending him flying, and scares the other officer. With the beginning of the apocalypse approaching, we see our protagonist barricading his windows and doors to keep the cold out. He prepares his plants to ensure he has food during the apocalypse. As he admires his work, someone knocks on his door. When he opens it, he finds 2 security guards from his building. They inform him that there will be no hot air in the building because something broke. The protagonist offers to fix it, saying he can't let things be like in his previous life. When they arrive at the warehouse, everything is frozen. Suddenly, 2 enormous hands grab one of the guards and crush him. It was a snow monster that devoured the guard and immediately tried to do the same with the other guard. This time, the protagonist activated his hack and saved him. But when the protagonist realizes the monster has the same speed as him, seeing no other chance, he throws the guard out of the warehouse. The protagonist looks around and finds a stone, which he decides to use as a weapon. Infusing his hack into the stone, he throws it with great force, piercing and destroying the monster. However, not everything goes smoothly. The protagonist begins to vomit blue blood and collapses right there. The protagonist wakes up on a table after using his powers and sees a woman in front of him, asking how he ended up like this and introducing herself as Dr. Joe. She measures the protagonist's temperature, which is at 11.5 degrees Celsius. The protagonist wonders how this is possible, tries to get up but slips and hits his head. Dr. Joe says she needs to figure out what's wrong with him and asks if he has superpowers. The protagonist, trying to avoid the question, says it must be a joke. He attempts to activate his powers and escape, but coughs up blue blood again and realizes he can't use his powers. The protagonist discovers that he can no longer use his powers. Suddenly, someone knocks on Dr. Dutora's laboratory door. It is the man who killed the protagonist in his past life. Dr. Dutora tells him to leave and instructs the protagonist to follow her orders if he wants to live. She tells the protagonist to act as if he is dead and not to move. She opens the door and lets the man in, who says he just wants to talk with her. She lies, saying that the protagonist died from poisoning. Recognizing the voice, the protagonist remembers that this man killed him in his past life. However, he makes a mistake and moves slightly. The man says he saw the protagonist blink and wants to check again. Dr. Dutora hits him and asks if he is questioning her abilities. The henchmen get upset, but the man stops them and apologizes to Dr. Dutora, reminding her not to forget that he is the one who runs her secret clinic. After the man leaves, Dr. Dutora tells the protagonist to get up and says he must have many questions. He asks where his clothes are. Dr. Dutora is surprised and remarks that this was the first thing he thought to ask.